because this day will finalize justice. It'll guarantee justice. It'll prove all that we've been living for. And we really don't even know. See, in all honesty, by this time, we've finished the 1,000 years. We're done with that. Now it's time to bring up all those other people and get about the business of getting Satan's business out of the way. Many of those in the world have no true understanding of what any of these days mean. The few who do have somehow been convinced by the world that these days are what they derisively call those Jewish days, have no future importance to them, or at least they don't think they do. But no worries. Most of them will never see this day. The day for them is tomorrow. The day for them is tomorrow. Because you see, in the plan of Elohim, after tomorrow, all of the tomorrows to come after tomorrow will be endless for all those who make it, for all those who get through. Let's drop anchor. Let's go to Revelation, the 20th chapter, and we'll start at the 7th verse. Revelation, the 20th chapter, starting at the 7th verse. And when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be set loose out of his prison. If you remember, he was locked up at the beginning of the 1,000 years. Satan will be set loose out of his prison, and he will go to mislead the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to assemble them in war, whose number is as the sand of the sea. That just amazes me. Now here we are after 1,000 years of being with God, learning beautiful things, the world being rebuilt. Yet here, after this 1,000 years, here comes Satan. We've been through a total cessation, a total ending of his plan of evil upon the earth. Yeshua has come in, ruled in perfect peace for 1,000 years, returning the world to the idyllic and perfect state that Elohim created it in during the days of the creation of man. After seeing these changes, experiencing these changes, being transformed by these changes for 1,000 years, it is mind-boggling to me that Satan could just pop up out of prison and within an incredibly short span of time seduce most of the world's population, those who have seen the beauty, had probably seen the ugliness of the world before when he did it the first time. Yet they join him to attack the citadel of Elohim, or the headquarters of Elohim, believing, no, get this, without a plan, they come forward with no caring of how wonderfully this world has been changed, how beautifully things have been made into near perfection. Yet, after seeing all that has happened on the earth, here they come. Here they come. Demons from all four corners. How could they have forgotten all of that? I see Satan. Satan he doesn't care about anything. He just wants to rule. It's mine. Like a kid. It's mine. Even though it's ugly as all get out, I messed everything up. I have whizzed on everything. Everybody hates each other. They're killing each other. Isn't it wonderful? Here he comes again with a completely insane mindset, emerging with a mind to take over all of this beauty now, in this now perfected world, with the only overriding thought behind it, possibly revenge, the regaining of power. Didn't you do enough last time? Yet Satan somehow felt, because he was praised so by the angels from the beginning, this is mine. I can do better than him. Comes back, seduces most of those who have lived up to this time in perfect peace. That's just insane to me. I don't understand that. Everything worked. Everything is beautiful. You want for nothing. And he comes along and says, you all should be in charge. We can run this. Of course, the operative word in that word run, that letter in that word run is I, which we know the letter I is not in the word run. Once you insert I in the word run, what do you get? That's exactly what he's doing. Yet here is most of humanity heading for heavenly Jerusalem, trying to retake the kingdom from Elohim. Verse 9. And they went up out over the breadth of the land and encircled the camp of the saints and the beloved city. And fire, who was it that had that book, The Fire Next Time? Baldwin, I believe his name was. And they were warning people, y'all better get this straight, because you got water last time. It'll be the fire next time. For those who don't believe it, there it is, verse 9. And they went up over the breadth of the land and encircled the camp of the saints in the beloved city, and fire from Elohim came down out of heaven and burned them down. And the devil, leading them astray, was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet were. You might have that's a mistranslation, were. And they were tormented day and night to the ages of the ages. In other words, on until Elohim decides, okay, we don't need him anymore. Time to pass sentence. Sentence has already been passed. They decide we're going to burn him up. And believe me, he will die. If he doesn't die, that means that the word is in conflict with itself. Because it said that the sinner, the one who sins, he shall die. And that includes Satan and anyone else. He is now vanquished forever. But let's consider one final reason why those humans of the millennium will be seduced to fall into sin unto death. The truth will ever be against Satan. We got to understand that, because the truth was never in him. So really all you have to do is hold the truth. You hold the truth, you got nothing to worry about with him. There's no truth in him. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't like it. Doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He's all about a lie. Truth will be ever against Satan. Therefore, falsehood is his particular recourse for everything and his particular instrument for everything. But naked falsehood is only repulsive to all who hear it. Knowing that what he knows to be a lie, he will throw forward and do it in such a sly and clever way that it commands our respect, pulls in our acceptance, and is so clear and so sure that it comes to us disguised to appear to be the truth. Falsehood can have no power over us until we're led to believe and conclude somehow that it is the truth. And this deluding of men, getting them to accept and follow lies and believe in false hopes, we can run this better than God. That's false hope. I can run that better than Elohim. I can do this better than anyone. You mean destroy? Yeah, that you can. We haven't gotten far enough along to say, oh, I can do this as well as he can. We have to get to that point where we can at least do what he said do. Have enough trouble with that. But this deluding, this acceptance, this false hope, all of it under the persuasion that they are accepting and following the truth. This is the great work of Satan through all time. It's been the business of Satan through all time, in every age. But those who are, after seeking this power, after seeking this beauty, after seeing this wonderful earth that Elohim will have transformed the earth into by then, will find his little draw exciting. Let's do it. Let's go with him. We can take over everything. Maybe we can even make it better. We can make what's perfect better? I don't think so. I don't think so. So, in this effort to destroy the works of Elohim in the earth, these end-time rebels will find these end-of-millennium followers of Satan will be, just as quickly as it came into their mind to do this, fire will come down from heaven, destroying every one of them. No need for judgment after that, because after you've gone through all of that beauty, after you've seen all the good that was done here, and you turn right back around and say, we can run with this guy. What's the point of judgment? There's no help for you at that point. You've had 2 chances. You blew it. You missed. You're done. To see truth fully and then follow falsehood can only be deserving of, James Baldwin who said, the fire next time. And a quick and final death. Remember, in the history of Elohim, this day will bring justice to the world. After this, after all of this horror, call it what it was, horror. After this, the rest of the dead will be resurrected. That comes tomorrow. Verse 11. And I saw a great white throne and the one sitting on it, whose face the earth and heaven fled, and a place was not found for them. And I saw the dead and the small and the great standing before Elohim, Yeshua. And books were opened, too. Books being open, being which book? The Bible. And then another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of the things written in the books, according to their works. 13. And the sea gave up the dead in it. You think about all the ways that people have died over the years. Some were never found, but they all come up and get a chance. And death and hell gave up the dead in them. That's hell, that's death in the grave. And they were each judged according to their works. And death and hell were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death. You really want to have some interesting conversation with people that are not in this tradition. Mention the second death. What? Never heard of that. You really want to have some interesting times? Do it at a funeral. So many people, I've never heard of that. You mean? I said, well, if you're going to live twice, you gotta die at least once. If you do wrong, you die twice. But most people, they've been hearing these Miller Lite commercials for so long. Oh, it only goes around once. Oh, who was that Miller? Somebody, I forget who it was. Oh, you only go around once. And that's what the world believes, that they're only gonna go around once. The Bible says you go around twice. Bible says you go around twice. But most people have never heard that. That's probably why there's so many empty seats here. That other guy, oh, you're going to get rich, you're going to get money. Everybody knows what money is. This is my people. I won't go there. We're not going to laugh at that because it's actually kind of sad. It's actually kind of sad that you can read a book for this long and miss all of this and not come to at least some conclusion of, wait, what is this? Something like that would just jump out at me if I hadn't read it before. Wait a minute, what is this second death? What is that all about? This second death. 15, and if anyone was not found having been written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. This, however, when it occurs, will be the end of the punitive cycle for all of those who have followed and believed the lies of Satan throughout all time. Many don't understand Elohim's process of judgment and don't look for it in any commentaries. They've all got it wrong, trust me. None of them even come close to what's really going to happen. It's in little pieces in Isaiah where it says that the child of 100 years will not, or the man of 100 years will not make it, or will. But what it's basically saying, and this is very precious information that a lot of people never get. Those who it was determined never got the information right, they will be given that information correctly by Elohim, and given X amount of time to prove that they can do these things and will do these things, joyously do these things, as told, as taught by Elohim. If you can't do that, let's say 100 years. If you're going to mess up, you got 100 years to do so, you got to. But the great thing about it, they're going to have a chance we never had. There will not be conflicting informations coming from different places where you can, I don't believe that. All information will come from one source. So either you believe it and live it, or that warm little spot over there. Once they start to believe, and you start to see how great this is, and it's going to be no more that, oh, well, let's bring him up after another. No, he's done. He's done. So once these folk get it and understand it, and once you get so many years into it and start to see how good it is, it gets exciting at that point. Yeah. You can do whatever you want to do. And then after you get past that 100 years or so and God says it's okay, then they get what we should have already had. Spirit bodies that will last for a couple of 100 years. No, forever. Forever. That's weepy stuff. That's stuff that makes you think, wow. And all I've got to do is obey. All I've got to do is accept. All I've got to do is hear it right. And if I'm not sure about it, find somebody that can explain to me what that means. And if I accept it and go forward, I can live forever. But the thing about that, how many of you right now, sitting in this room, have no problem believing and wrapping your mind around and thinking about living forever? Raise your hands. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Let me tell you why I don't believe that. Because until I really started to get into this, I could hit the wall. And I'm not talking about that. I know I have a little joke I have when people say that they're spirit. I'm already spirit. I already got the spirit. I say, okay, you got that, you got the spirit, run toward that wall. Full speed. Hit it. If you're spirit, you should be able to go through it. If not, we'll call an ambulance for you. That's been my offer for years. But this isn't that. This is different. I've been through this, and you all have too, but you didn't want to think about it too much, but you raised your hand. That's all right. Because what I'm saying isn't something strange. You think forward so long, and you can't think beyond that. It cuts off somewhere. And you say, whoa, wow, by now I'm supposed to be dead. But because your mind is having some trouble with that idea that it's never going to cut off. Now, the body, on the other hand, is fascinating in that it can completely understand it. As a matter of fact, they do what, if there's anything left. When people jump out of a building, say from 30 or 40, 50 stories up and jump off, they usually check them. You know, they do an autopsy. Everybody say, that's crazy. No, it's not. And what they found out is most people, when they get about maybe 10 floors down, the brain shuts off. Why? Because two things from the inside, your mind has trouble living forever. But from the inside, the brain has trouble with the idea that it's about to die. So it just shuts off. This is proven. Look into it. It's there. Psychology Today or something like that. You ain't gonna find it in the Sun Times or the Tribune. Forget that. They don't want to scare you. That's why they lie to you. That's why most of what goes on in this world beyond shootings and stuff, they like you scared. They just don't want you so scared you're actually gonna do something about it. But this is how it is. We've reached that point where we want, but it's great that we want to believe that we can accept it. Let's keep doing that, because when it comes, we will accept it, and it'll make perfect sense, and you won't ever hear anybody, well, if he could die. No, not going to happen again. It's all over. What did it say? The last enemy is what? It was years ago, I think it was one of the Cardinals, Bernardin, I think it was, and he had contracted cancer. He was running around telling people, death is a friend. I couldn't laugh because it was just too sad, and so many people were buying into it. He died, had a big funeral, and that was the big thing. I think it was a banner they had sitting in the back. Death is your friend. With friends like that, who needs enemies? But if death is your friend, you have one friend to go with you. What's his name? I'd be kind of glad to see him gone, though. You hate to hear people say this. I want him gone. I wish I'd kill him myself. But at some point, you have to just say, well, not I'm happy. You don't jump up. Party. No. Well, he did this, he did that, he did that. And I guess that there was nothing else that could happen. So there it is. It's gone. But this day is his last active day of doing dirt. His last day. Hope y'all have fun. Because it's going to be it'll be that little piece of joy that you want to rein in, because it's like you finally see him get his. And you think about all the horrible things that have happened to you, all the horrible things that have happened to other people, all the horrible things that have happened from Adam to the end. And say, that's all over. That's done. Done. But you won't find anything about that judgment period in the commentaries, which is sad. These were learned people, but for some reason, once they got wrapped up in that whole idea of denominational directionism, oh, it can only be this way. Oh, it can only be that way. It can only be that way. And now you got 5,000 different ways. What did Elohim say? One faith, one Lord, one God, one baptism. But you got 5,000 people, and half of them are sprinkling water on you and telling you that all of that gone. All of these people that are going to be judged in the coming time after the millennium, all those 57 billion people that will come up to be judged will not have to deal with all of those different, is he a Pentecostal? Is he a Baptist? Is he a this? Is he a that? No, he heard it from Elohim. He learned it from Elohim. He says, living according to Elohim. And after he has proven that he can live for Elohim, he will be turned to spirit and live forever. But anyone whose name is not found in the Lamb's Book of Life they have no chance to make it into eternal life. So anyone that, I don't know, think about it. Let's get this thing right. There are people, my wife she probably has told this story down here. I'm sure somebody's heard of that, about how when we first got married, I would work nights back then, and all day I'd have Bibles over here, tracts and such over here, matching that stuff up, trying to make it make sense, trying to make it all make sense, trying to get it right. You do that for X amount of years, and it becomes an issue where you don't know everything. No one knows everything. But almost anything that is asked, you've at least got some concept of what it is. And I'm sure there's other people like that. I've heard rumors about somebody else like that. But it is what it is. You have to get to the point where study becomes as important in this book as it was when you were going for a degree. As important as it was when you were going to, whether it was grade school, kindergarten, high school, whatever it was that important. And it's still that important. I still hear, what you been doing down there all the time? Studying. It is what it is. But it's not something that's how it was intended. If you read this book all the time, you'll read it, and sometimes you'll go back to it, and then like something that didn't make sense last time, you read something over here, it infused that with some knowledge that you didn't have before, and all of a sudden, wow, last time I read this, it didn't make sense to me, but now it does. I see teeth. Good. That means it's happening. The more you read it, the more that happens. I'm not going to say there's going to ever be a day when you're not going to have any questions. But there will be a day when the questions will be deep enough to make somebody feel good. Wow, at least we're thinking, instead of feeling like you're just trying to, I don't know. But it is what it is. You have to study constantly and study with people who have an idea of what is really here, not any of the 5,280 other denominations out here that are saying, when we all get to, well, we've heard it. But there are things that need to be understood. How many of you think the Pharisees are going to make it? I don't know. I'm not sure. And since it's really not my job, I'm not going to say they're not. But the Bible itself gives you some interesting hints. Let's go to Ezekiel, the 13th chapter, the 19th verse. Ezekiel, the 13th chapter, the 19th verse. Ezekiel, the 13th chapter, the 19th verse, where it says, "And you have profaned me among my people for handfuls of barley and for pieces of bread," which back then, in other words, you did it for money or for profit on some level. To put beings that should not die, to put to death beings that should not die, and to keep alive beings who should not live. Now that was talking about a very specific incident, but let's make sure we understand what that is. Who did Pilate put to death? And who asked him for Barabbas? Who asked for Barabbas to be freed. No, it wasn't the people. Specifically, the people were the ones that were infused with the idea, but the idea came from the Pharisees, from the Sadducees, and the scribes. Now, let's go read that again, and it'll make a little bit more sense to you. And you have profaned me among my people for handfuls of barley and for pieces of bread. More specifically, it was 30 pieces of silver, I believe. To put to death beings that should not die, and to keep alive beings who should not live. By your lying to my people, you were right. Yeah, the people did say it, but they were prompted. It's all here. This book is amazing. It's amazing. By your lying to my people who listen to lies. Therefore, thus saith Master Yeshua, see, I am against you. I am against you and your cushions by which you hunt the beings there like birds. And I should tear them from your arms and shall let the beings go, the beings you hunt like birds, bringing in more people lying to them. And I shall tear off your veils and shall deliver my people out of your hand. And they shall no longer be as prey in your hand. And you shall know that I am Master Elohim. Because with falsehood you have made the heart of the righteous sad, whom I have not made sad. And you have strengthened the hands of the wrong, so that he does not turn from his evil way to keep him alive. Many argue that, the Pharisees didn't know that Yeshua was the Messiah. Oh, they did know. Their attempt to kill Lazarus was proof of it. Their upbraiding, and they talked about killing him too. The blind man whose sight was restored by Yeshua on the Sabbath proved it. Want some scriptural proof? Let's go to John, the third chapter, the first verse. I believe Pastor Hall mentioned this before. John, the third chapter, the first verse. John, the third chapter, the first verse, where it says, and there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Judeans. He came to Yeshua by night. Wonder why? No, I don't. Because he didn't want anybody to see him going down there to talk to him. Because basically they had ripped him so horribly till anybody was afraid to go near him because they didn't want to be thrown out of the temple, excommunicated, if you will. He came to Yeshua by night and said to him, Rabbi, don't miss this. We know that you are a teacher come from Elohim. For no man can do these miracles which you do unless Elohim is with him. Now, did they know? Okay. That's not enough. Maybe we need more. Matthew, the 22nd chapter, 16th verse. Matthew, the 22nd chapter, the 16th verse. where it says, and they sent their disciples out to him along with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that you are true and that you teach the way of Elohim in truth. Nor do you care for anyone, for you do not regard the persons of men. In other words, you're not saying, oh, you got money, you come sit down here in the front. You homeless, you go back there in the back and sit back and bring me a clothespin. He didn't do that. He treated everybody the same. It is surely the decision of the Godhead as to the disposition in the kingdom of the Pharisees as to whether they will make it. But it would appear that the Pharisees will have a little bit of difficulty make it into the kingdom of Elohim. But like I said, that's not my choice. It's not my decision. Therefore, let's just wait and see what happens. Another mystery to think of. Wow, we're even setting up our mysteries to hang on to all the way through the millennium to the end to see what happens. This is amazing. Others, however, talk about heaven like it's up there somewhere. So they have told some stories that usually if something happens and if I forget, I just say, excuse me, I've had a stroke. The mind is not what it used to be. It's just not. Somebody asked the question, are Enoch and Elijah in heaven? I want you to remember that this is a great day, but their day hasn't come yet. The book was very interesting in how it played with them, but that was not for them. That was for we who want to get it all and think we got it all at one time. And, they're in heaven. And you even hear that and see that. If you ever want to try to go out and research that, you're going to have some trouble. But here's what it says, and we'll try to break that down in the time we've got here. You see, Enoch, it says, was translated that he should not see death. That word see is interesting. Elijah, on the other hand, went up by a whirlwind, it says here, into heaven. And it was talking about into the air. It wasn't talking about the physical place, heaven. Yet, the Bible reveals in its unique, indisputable way that they are not in heaven today. Okay, so where are they? Well, let's start with Enoch. Enoch, it said, was translated. Okay, so where did he go? Was he immediately taken to heaven? No, because Yeshua himself said something. Let's go to John, the 3rd chapter, the 13th verse. John, the 3rd chapter, the 13th verse, where it says, no one has gone up to heaven except the one who came down from heaven. And then it says specifically who that was, the Son of Man, who we know is Yeshua, our Messiah. Here we have Yeshua's own words that no man except himself had ascended into heaven. The Bible will never contradict itself. Oh, we might contradict the Bible and say that we got it from there. But the Bible will never contradict itself. So let's see what the Bible says of Enoch. Let's go to Genesis, the 5th chapter, the 22nd verse. Genesis, the 5th chapter, the 22nd verse. what it says. And Enoch walked with Elohim after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. 23. In all the days of Enoch, this is a little bit telling right here. It's implying some end. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with Elohim, and he was not, for Elohim took him. Okay, here was a man that pleased Elohim, a man that walked with Elohim. That was not basically means at some point he disappeared from that spot. That doesn't mean that he went it doesn't even tell you where he went. But it says also he was a man that pleased Elohim, a man that walked with Elohim. That basically means that they walked together, that they were of the same mind. They were thinking the same way. One said something, the other said, yeah, I agree with that. Hey, I need you to do this. I got that. There was no, no. That's not walking with, that's something else. He walked with Elohim. Elohim and Enoch were in agreement. Enoch had to have faith. For in Hebrews 6, the apostle says of him, but without faith it is impossible to please him, for he that comes to Elohim must believe that he is Elohim, implied, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So Enoch walked with Elohim. He obeyed Elohim. He followed Elohim. He walked in his paths by faith. Now, when you go back, that expression, all his days, is used in the same 5th chapter of Genesis about a dozen times, and always it means that the person lived for that length of time only, and he died. So Enoch lived no more than 365 years, because all his days were 365 years. If he was living on, somehow there would surely be a way to say that here. The fact that they didn't say that says at some point around at 365 years, he must have died. So what's the key? The English word translate is the key here. The original Greek word for translate is G3346 for those who deal with Strong's numbers and study. G3346. Metatithomai. This word signifies transfer, exchange, or changing sides, to put something in another place, and hence to transport it or move it somewhere else. This happened from time to time for reasons. The same Greek word is rendered carried over in Acts 16. Here we read that after Jacob died, his body was carried over or translated or transported to Shechem, where he was buried. That's what your Bible says. Jacob was transported or translated to his place of burial. The same was done with Moses. Why? Because of his notoriety and Yahweh's knowledge of the negative proclivities of the children of Israel. Satan also knew what they would do if they were somehow to get their hands on the body of Moses. It would have become an idol. So what did Yahweh do with Moses? Deuteronomy, the 34th chapter, the 4th verse. Let's first deal with Jacob. Then we'll get to the others. And Yahweh said to him, Deuteronomy, the 34th chapter, the 4th verse. And Yahweh said to him, this is the land which I have sworn to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, I will give it to your seed. I have caused you to see with your eyes. But back to Moses, but you shall not cross over there. And Moses, the servant of Yahweh, died there in the land of Moab, according to the command of Yahweh, and he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, and no one knows his grave to this day. Why? Let's put it this way. If we were to stack up in the corner all of the pieces of twig that people have run around the world with, claiming that it was a piece of the stake that Yeshua was hung on, you could probably build another hotel from that stack. Now, imagine if they had been able to grab the body of Moses, what a great idol it would have become. Look at what they did with the Nehu stand, the staff that he used to heal them when they questioned him, when they whined in the desert. He made a golden staff with the snake around it. Called it Nehu stand. That's what they called it later. Every time they would whine, snakes would bite them. When the snakes would bite them, they would have Moses stand there with the Nehu stand in his hand. And they would, when they looked upon the snake, they were healed. Now, of course, after they got out of the desert, what did they do? Put the thing in a little box, and they were worshiping it. So it had to be destroyed. It was just that whole deal of coming out of Babylon. They didn't want to, because they weren't given anything concrete to worship as an idol. So they had to have, everybody else had idols, we need idols too. So they would just grab hold of anything that became an idol. That's just how it always worked. Paul, however, gave us further evidence that Enoch is dead. As confusing as the King James is sometimes, it is made clear in a deeper reading of the chapter. Let's go to Hebrews, the 11th chapter, the 5th verse. Hebrews, the 11th chapter, the 5th verse, where it says, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and he was not found because Elohim translated him. Now we understand that just means moving him from one place to another. Translated him. For before his translation he had this witness borne to him that he had been. Didn't say is, said had been very well pleasing unto Yahweh. But the best hint he gave us is in Hebrews, let's go down to the 38th chapter. Hebrews, the 11th chapter, the 38th verse, my mistake. The conclusive words have to be taken for what they are. and he gave a rather conclusive remark about all of the saints mentioned in this chapter. If you've read the Hebrews 11, they're talking about all the things that have gone on through time, all of those people who have shown fealty to Yahweh, who did exploits for Yahweh, but were never given the promise as yet. Hebrews, the 11th chapter, the 38th verse, where it says, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. And these all, approved by testimony of faith, received not the promise. And in that whole thing, if you go back to 5, you find that Enoch was there. So Enoch didn't get it either. If he was in heaven, wouldn't you say that he'd received the promise? Yeah, but he's not there. Verse 40, Elohim having provided, don't miss this, and Elohim having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. In other words, everybody's going to get the reward, but not then. Yes, Enoch died, but will rise to his reward with the rest of the saints who have been approved by Elohim. Yet, even Yeshua made his promise to all who obey him and keep his commandments. John, the 8th chapter, the 51st verse. John, the 8th chapter, the 51st verse, where it says, verily, verily, I say unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. He's talking about the second death, by the way. And after resurrecting Lazarus, he spoke to Lazarus' sister Martha. And notice what he said here, and he just basically just banged home the same truth. John, the 11th chapter, the 24th verse. John, the 11th chapter, the 24th verse, where it says, Martha said to him, speaking of Yeshua, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection in the last day. Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one believing in me, though he die, he shall live. And everyone living and believing in me shall not die to the age, speaking of the second death. And everyone living and believing in me shall not die to that age, never. Do you believe this? Enoch did die. Small proofs are there, despite the errors of the commentaries. Enoch will get his reward when all the saints of Elohim receive theirs. Elijah was a different case. He had done well training the prophets of his day and had defeated the false prophets of Ahab and his wife Jezebel. He had spent most of his term as prophet running in fear of his life, but was in lockstep with Yahweh. Could say he walked with him too. The entire time. The purpose of Yahweh in removing Elijah was to replace him with another man who would occupy Elijah's office in Israel for another 50 years. This work had to start under a new king, for Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, had just died, and Elijah was already aging. So they needed someone strong to continue that prophetic line. Elijah already aging, so as not to disqualify Elijah in the sight of the people, God took him away from the sons of the prophets and the people. And Elijah was brought in, and the mantle fell down to him, literally. Thus, Elohim, or Yahweh, preserved the name and the office of his prophet without pulling a prophet away, which would have, in the eyes of the people, looked as if he was not doing well, or that he had somehow failed. Having crossed the Jordan near Jericho, Elijah was taken up by a whirlwind in what appeared to be a chariot and horses of fire. The violent motion of the wind pulled the mantle right off of Elijah as he was ascending into the sky, and it fell right onto the shoulders of Elisha. You probably remember reading the promise of Elijah that Elisha would have a double portion of the Spirit of Elohim if he would be allowed by Elohim to see Elisha taken up. We find this in 2 Kings, the 2nd chapter, the 9th verse. All this, all of it meant that Elijah was to be the leader, the new head of the sons of the prophets. Having ascended into the air, Elisha was borne away out of sight of the new leader beyond the horizon. But the new king of Israel was another son of Ahab, Jehoram, or Joram as some have called him. The beginning of his reign marked this year of the removal of Elijah. We'll find that in 2 Kings, the 1st chapter, the 18th verse. During this king's reign, Elisha was the recognized prophet of Yahweh. In the 5th year of Jehoram, king of Israel, the son of the king of Judah began to reign along with his father in Judah. 2 Kings, the 8th chapter, the 16th verse. His name also was Jehoram. The first thing he did to establish his kingdom and his rule was to put his relatives to the sword, lest they should claim the crown from him. What does the Bible say about murder? That was just the beginning. That was just the beginning. 2 Chronicles, the 21st chapter, the 4th verse, for nearly 6 years he followed the ways of the nations around him and all about him and did evil in Elohim's sight. Almost 10 years had now expired since Elijah was taken from the people, but what do you think was about to happen? We get our answer here as to what happened to him. Yes, after this wicked king was chosen, Elohim chose Elijah to do something. He chose Elijah to write a letter and have it sent to the king. 2 Chronicles, the 5th chapter, the 10th verse. 2 Chronicles, the 5th chapter, the 10th verse, where it says, with all this, Edom remained in rebellion. Out from under the hand of Judah unto this day, Libnah also rebelled at the same time, to not be under his hand, because he had forsaken Elohim, God of his fathers. Moreover, he made high places in the mountains of Judah and caused the inhabitants of Jerusalem to commit fornication and compelled Judah onto this. Then we get to verse 12. And a writing came to him from Elijah the prophet that said this, thus has Yahweh, the Elohim of David, your father, said, because you have not walked in the ways of Jehoshaphat, your father, nor in the ways of Asa, the king of Judah, but have walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and have made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem fornicate, like unto the fornication of the house of Ahab, Whoa, that was interesting how he said that, but if you understand what Ahab did, you realize that it was no small thing. Like unto the fornication of the house of Ahab, and also have slain your brethren of your father's house, who were better than yourself. In other words, those who followed Yahweh better than you did. Behold, Yahweh smites your people with a great plague, and your sons and your wives and all their goods, and you shall have great sickness with disease of your bowels, until your bowels fall out by reason of the sickness day by day. From the wording of this letter, it is clear that Elijah wrote it after these events had occurred, for he speaks of them as past events and of the disease as future. 2 years after the king became diseased, the king died, having reigned only 8 short years. Elohim used Elijah to convey the message because he was the prophet of Yahweh in the days of the present king's father, who he was comparing him to say, hey, this is what should have been done, but you did this. For this, we're taking you out. The letter that Elijah had delivered was recognized as his, proving that he was known to be alive someplace. Just how much longer he lived, the Bible does not reveal. But it proves no one has gone up to heaven except for our Messiah, Yeshua. And this and many other stories in this book prove positively that we must do the will of Elijah, and also to do the will, more importantly, the thing that Elijah showed us to do through Elohim. You see, if we expect to make it to this day in history as leaders and kings as we are promised, we must do the will of Elohim and never waver in that doing as much as is possible. There's nothing on this planet that will give us greater blessing than this work. Nothing. No matter where we go, no matter what we do, no matter who we see, no matter what we attain in this life, it will all end. And at some point, we'll have to start doing this. Why not do it all together? Oh, I got to go to school. Fine, do that. Do this too. I got to work. I got to do this too. We have to reach a point where this becomes at least as, and hopefully more important than anything else that we're doing. Because this is what will last. Remember what he said, the fire next time. Nothing we do is going to survive the fire next time. Know that. Internalize it. Work with it. Make it a part of you. Understand we're trying to make it into a kingdom that will not end. Once we get to that point, we can do anything we want to do. Now, when you say that, that doesn't mean anything. There will always be law. There will always be a path. There will always be some things that say this is how to do this. Why are we not used to this? You hear people walking around all the time. Oh, I follow the Constitution. Yeah, you and a couple of other people, everybody else doing what they want to do. But we have to reach that point where we recognize that rules are not there to limit us. They're actually there to bring us up to do more, because if everybody's doing what's right, everybody stays out of everybody else's way. If everybody's doing the things that make sense, Nobody's doing anything that doesn't make sense, so that might impede your progress in the well-doing that you're going for. We all have to get to that point where we believe this is real and live as if we believe it. If we do that, we'll make it to this 1,000 years. We'll get through that as kings, and by now we know how to show these people that come up in that second resurrection. That'll be us. Turn. No, not that way. This way. Don't you want that? Instead of just saying, no, no. Let's get it right. Get it right. He's given us a book with everything in there. Okay, it might not seem like everything right now because we're still working on it. We're still, even this festival is rehearsal. It's practice. This isn't the real thing. The real thing is we can look back at this and it's going to be like we were in a hovel. Wow. We've got to get to that point where it's real to us. So real. Where you said that, okay, yeah, I can imagine forever. Those folks have a head start because they can see it. They can see it for real. They can imagine it. Even through a glass darkly, they can imagine it. But we have to all get to that point where we can imagine it. Because if you see, it's almost like you're out at the end of the street, you look at the end of the street, you see a gold bar, nobody else sees it. And you stop. You don't want to move too fast because people think, wow, if he's running, there must be something down there. But you want to move, just kind of like Joe, it's kind of cool. But if you get to that bar, I dare somebody try to take it out your hand. I dare somebody try to take it from you. Try to say, oh, that's mine, you can't have it. Think of the kingdom of God just like you think of that gold bar at the end of the street. Hang on to it for dear life. Because in the end, that's exactly what it is. God bless you all.